snooker champion, John Higgins.
Good evening, welcome to another edition of Snooker Live. Friday night, the bank holiday weekend is beginning in earnest. The semi-finals are in full swing. We've just had a very dramatic session between Mark Selby and Neil Robertson. I've been joined once again by the key man in the press room, Ivan Hershkovitz. Ivan, what a massive, massive last frame from Neil Robertson. Selby's in the balls. It looks as though he could finish today 10-6. Robbo's come in with a clearance. What a big difference to trail by 2 at 9-7 rather than 4 at 10-6.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, the last frame of a session is always important, especially when they're not playing another session until the next day, because both players will be thinking about what that last frame overnight. But like you say, what a pivotal moment. Selby 9-6 up, he was cruising, he was in the balls, the balls were nicely positioned. He was on 53 on a black, just trying to nudge the reds open. Only needed probably 2 or 3 more reds to win the frame, and then just took his eye off the pot, missed the black. And fair play to Robertson, it was a great clearance. There was 1 red on the side cushion, and he kept his cool, cleared up, and you could see what it meant to Robertson. A little punch to the fist as he left the arena. 9-7 down overnight is a big difference between that and 10-6.
Well, I was speaking to Steve Davis earlier on this afternoon before the match went out live on the BBC. It's literally just that session's finished, 10-15 minutes ago. And Steve Davis said he can't see that match doing anything other than going right down to the wire, scheduled to finish, therefore, probably quite late tomorrow night. Yeah,
quite possibly. And then so evenly matched. It's been very swinging one way and the other so far. Robertson made a really good start today, came back to 5-0, and then he felt he might push on. Selby moved away again, won 4 of the next 5, 9-6, but now Robertson's come back and won that last frame. 2 very evenly matched players, and you're right, I think it will go very close. And of course, whoever wins arguably will be at a disadvantage going into the final, having expended that much energy, and they've got to be back on the table at 2 o'clock on Sunday.
We're seeing a little bit of a pattern in that match, with Mark Selby taking more of an initiative in terms of the lead, but then every time he gets away, Neil pegs him back. And when you remember that the incredible comeback, not just the century of centuries, but the incredible comeback that Neil Robertson produced against Judd Trump, he's come here with real mental fortitude, which he's already demonstrated in that quarter-final against Trump.
Yeah, it has followed a similar pattern so far. He was pretty much behind Trump all the way through the match, until it got to 11-8, then suddenly he produced that final burst, and he hasn't been ahead of Selby since 2-1. I think when he came back to 5-0, he felt he could push on, but he didn't. You do get the feeling possibly if Robertson gets ahead, he might go on a run. But so far Selby's managing to stay ahead, and that gives you the feeling that it's going to go all the way.
If it does end up being a late finish for those 2 guys on Saturday night, how much of a factor do you think fatigue could be on Sunday? Because on the one hand, you could say, yes, it's going to be difficult to concentrate, but then on the other, there's a huge prize dangling for both of them. Robbo is desperate for a second title. Mark Selby's desperate to get into a second final, having not done that for 7 years, and it's the one he wants. He's won the UK, he's won the Masters, he needs the World Championship to complete snooker's Triple Crown. So, do you think fatigue will play a part, or will they somehow, from nowhere, manage to summon the energy to take on Ronnie O'Sullivan or Barry Hawkins?
Yeah, it's hard to say. Certainly those 2 guys will have no shortage of adrenaline, no shortage of motivation. They're both very young, very fit guys, so I don't think there'll be a problem on the physical side. Sometimes there can be the sort of mental exhaustion, which Selby in particular has spoken about. I'm not sure. I mean, John Higgins in the past a few times spoke about he felt that the player who finished on the Saturday evening was always at a disadvantage. But actually, if you statistically analyse it and go back over the years, there's not much difference between if you look at the player who's ended up winning the World Championship, whether he finished on the Saturday afternoon or the evening. So I'm not sure. If it went really late on Saturday night and it was a really exhausting match, it could be a factor. But of course, whoever was in the final, if it is up against Ronnie O'Sullivan, is going to be up in for such a massive task anyway.
Well, you've just mentioned Ronnie O'Sullivan and Barry Hawkins. They'll be coming out for the 3rd session of their semi-final shortly. Ronnie won the second of those 2 sessions, 5-3, having taken the first 6-2. So he's got an 11-5 advantage. We'll talk more about that in just a moment, because Barry Hearn was up at the Crucible yesterday announcing another tournament, not one in China, one in the UK. Well, there's never a dull moment when Barry Hearn holds a press conference. And Barry, great news, another tournament in the UK, live on ITV4.
I'm absolutely delighted. I mean, we rolled the dice with the Champion of Champions last year, twisted a few arms, and it delivered. You know, it delivered not just great sporting entertainment and great snooker, but huge ratings. So, you know, that's all I need. I need that little help every now and again, and God smiled on us, and ITV4 were very impressed, so they came back with a new 5-year deal for the Champion of Champions and a new event, the World Grand Prix, to be staged in March 2015 for the top 32 players on a 1-year ranking list. So, and the ranking list begins at the beginning of this year's World Championship. So some of those guys, the Kieran Wilsons, have made a good inroad into earning prize money. The Michael Walmsley, that's what it's for. It's for encouraging people to say there's more opportunity in this game if you get the results. So go out there and win. And it's a great compliment to the sport. We know we're doing well globally. We see our figures. We see the reach going up and up and up in different countries all the time. It's still reassuring when the country where it all started in actually comes back and says, we like this, we'd like some more. So well done to them, and we'll make sure the Ricoh Arena for Champion of Champions and the Grand Prix will get events that justify where we think snooker sits at the moment, because we're hot.
Well, it's important, isn't it? Because we know, as you've said, a first ranking event in India, the game's massive in China, but it is important to keep freshening things up back here.
I think the great thing is what you've got to keep doing is giving opportunities to players. We always get a few players who'd rather stay in bed. Well, that's okay, because they'll slip down the rankings and disappear if they're not careful. My job is actually to inspire all these new players coming through and saying, look, this is what you're playing for. These are the opportunities you've got. You can actually change your life through this sport, but you better be very, very good. You better be very determined, very disciplined, and and very professional, because it's going to be a tough circuit to make a living on. But if you get there, happy days.
And just any idea when you're going to announce where it will be?
The World Grand Prix will be announced in the next month or so. We already know the Ricoh Arena for Champion of Champions, obviously, but as long we spend quite a bit of time looking at market research and thinking, where will we attract the biggest crowds to create the best atmosphere for the players, the sponsors and the TV companies, because it's a partnership between all of us. It has to work for everybody, and everyone has to do their bit. Everyone has to come up to the plate, as they say, and that involves the players as well. We've got to show that we can entertain millions upon millions of people, not just a live audience but TV audiences around the world. If we can hit that right, and I think we're on our way. I think this year's World Championships, goodness me, some of the games we've seen, Dominic Dale and Barry Hawkins, unbelievable. Wow, it's unbelievable. The standard of play has been great, the excitement's been great, and that means we show there is a big future for this game, not just globally, but also back at home base. And the fact that we can announce new tournaments, the fact that we can increase prize money, the fact that we can spread sponsor value and give people value for money in a difficult economy when they come and watch it. Leave them with a smile on their face. Let them be entertained. And I don't think this World Championships has let anyone down so far.
Well, talking about entertainment, where do you think that amazing moment last night with Neil Robertson sits in the all-time great days in Crucible history? There was a real buzz around the place yesterday, and Neil, having done it, came out and said, actually, I played it down, but that was really, really important to me. And there was almost an analogy that it was snooker's equivalent of the 4-minute mile.
Well, I mean, you've got two things with that match, obviously. One is a great game. But, the 100 centuries you can't forget, can you? I mean, that is such a... I mean, it didn't just create a new world record. I mean, it smashed it, didn't it, to oblivion. And yet, does that mean that Neil Robertson's going to win the World Championships? No, it was one game. And there's been lots of other great games. I mean, the purists amongst us will start talking about the green he potted in the final, as being probably shot the tournament. But there was lots of other moments in that game, moments of drama. And, what we're doing is creating this soap opera, this, a game of snooker is like reading a book with 17 different chapters in it, and each chapter's about a different subject, And I often compare Ronnie to watching an artist prepare a great portrait, watching him at work. There's a lot more comparisons you can make within snooker, which means it becomes enthralling TV. It's one of those moments, and I think you saw it last night, and you saw it with Hawkins and Dale. It's actually almost impossible to turn the channel over. It's hypnotic, isn't it? I mean, you become engrossed in the playing out of all this drama. And it's great that not every event is the same. You know, people say, oh, these best of 19s, best of 25s. They should all be like that. Wrong. The World Championships is an iconic event. It's the top of the tree. It's a blue ribbon event. And it's a globally acknowledged event. It has to stand apart. Every single event should have its own personality to some extent. You know, we talk about the World Grand Prix. That's the only event where the top 32 players on a one-year list will be invited. We talk about the Champion of Champions and say they're only available to people that win events that are open to all players. So everyone has that dream. Most people's dreams in life and in sport never materialise. But the most important thing is they have the dream to start with.
Thanks very much, Barry.
So just to clarify, that's the World Grand Prix. It's a one-year money list for the top 32, and that 1 year began at the beginning of the World Championship. So, Ivan, for the likes of, say, Alan McManus, who's just got back up into the world's top 32, courtesy of reaching the quarter-finals, he's got a great chance and a great platform going forward to next February to try and get in that invitational.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the quarterfinalists here, they've got 25 grand towards that already. You know, which is a great head start. But I think it is just brilliant to have a new event in the UK. You know, obviously snooker's growing all around the world. We've got new events in China and around Europe each year. But to have a new big event in the UK on terrestrial TV, on ITV4, is fantastic. You know, a few years ago, who would have thought that ITV would have come back into snooker in such a great way? Yeah, really good news for the players and the fans.
Yeah, that will be one to look forward to. As Barry said, the announcement as to where it's going to be will be made sometime in the next month or so. So it really is a case of watch this space on that one. Right, as we look at the clock, we have around about half an hour to go before the third instalment of drama. Remember, this is a rerun of last year's final. Ronnie O'Sullivan will resume 11-5 up against Barry Hawkins. And Barry's had a great year. He won the Players' Championship recently. We were just talking about that in Preston. Pocketed a not insubstantial sum of 100 grand for that one. He's under pressure here, though. He needs a massive start tonight.
Yeah, he does. And I think when he lost the first 4 frames this morning, 10-2 behind, would have gone back to his dressing room and thought, you know, to be on the wrong end of that scoreline is really worrying. But he did well, to be fair, to come out and win 3 of the next 4, 11-5, and give himself a sliver of hope. I think Barry, beneath all the, the sort of very calm, nice, polite kind of character, there's a pretty fierce competitor inside there. And he will be thinking tonight, I want to try and get back into this match. You know, if he can win the session 5-3, it's 14-10 going in tomorrow, he'll still have a chance. I think anything less than that, then it's it's too much of a mountain to climb. But yeah, so Barry's intention tonight will be to try and win the session.
And from Ronnie's perspective, there is the possibility, if he were to win this mini session, if we want to call it that, 6-2, he would have victory in the match, and therefore he'd have the whole day off tomorrow to rest before the final. Do you think that will be something in his mind, or will he be simply focusing on frame by frame, and then if it ends up in that scenario, it's a bonus?
I think he'll be trying to put that out of his mind. I think he'll just, like you say, just trying to move forward frame by frame in the match. I think you start thinking too far ahead of yourself can be dangerous, and Ronnie has learned that from the experience of winning 5-1 championships in the past. And I'm sure Steve Peters, who was here this morning, if he's still here, he'll be telling Ronnie that play it one frame at a time, just play the balls as they are, and try and just move towards that final place.
But if for some reason he were able to get across the line tonight, what sort of advantage do you think that would be come Sunday, bearing in mind how tight it looks as though and how late it's going to be between Mark Selby and Neil Robertson tomorrow night?
Yeah, well, of course, as we spoke about before, Robertson or Selby could end up, fatigued going into the final. On the other hand, Ronnie would then have to spend the whole day tomorrow, kicking his heels. Who knows what would he do? He'd probably just rather get on with it. So yeah, it's a difficult one. But I think the great thing is that we're going to have a great final, hopefully, and it's a real looking forward with great anticipation to the weekend now.
It certainly is going to be a worthy climax to this season-building finale. It's getting to be a very exciting time here at the Crucible. The one table set up. So in around about half an hour's time, live on the BBC, it's the third instalment of the Rocket against Barry Hawkins. Ronnie leading 11-5. The other semi-final, beautifully poised. Mark Selby and Neil Robertson will resume tomorrow morning, with Selby having that 2-frame advantage, not 4 though, after Robbo just stole the last frame. So all to play for, all at stake. Join us live on the BBC tonight at 7 o'clock. Hawkins against O'Sullivan, part 3. But for now, bye-bye.
A genius at work.
World Snooker Champion, John Higgins.